So here for the first official, I want to say hacking pro tips interview, and I've got Ben with me. Nahamsek, is that Nahamsek? That's right. Okay, perfect. I wanted to make sure I didn't butcher that. But for all of those listening or even watching, just a bit of background on Ben. Currently, when I was checking this out, we're number 8 on BugCrowd overall with 167 bugs found. And what I found really interesting was 100% acceptance rate on BugCrowd.
Yes.
That was impressive. Additionally, maybe even more so was the Hall of Fame, reference to Apple, eBay, BugCrowd, GitHub, Google, HackerOne. I feel like I could keep going, but Medium, Netflix, PayPal, Rails, Salesforce, Shopify, Uber, Yahoo. And then over on HackerOne, 22nd rank overall with 86 percentile in impact, 91 in signal, and 196 bugs found. And it looks like you joined about 2 years ago on HackerOne.
Yes.
So yeah, pretty crazy. And the vulnerabilities too, at least from what I could find publicly, ranging from SQL injection to XSS to remote code execution, XXE, directory traversal. Anyways, I don't have to tell you, but anyways, for everyone listening, it's impressive. It's really impressive.
Appreciate that.
So really, kind of this started off with the conversation that I had with the HackerOne team, writing a book on white hat hacking, and it's really a guide to get kind of people started, get them going. And so when I reached out to you, I thought we could kind of cover some similar topics. So I thought we'd start with kind of how you got started with hacking.
I always use this. It's not really a joke, but it's funny. I always tell the story. When I was literally really, really young, when I was little, I mean, I started on a computer at a really young age. My dad swears like I was on a computer at the age of 3 trying to play video games. Like there was like MS-DOS game back in the day.
Yeah.
And my the one thing that I never forget was my mom always trying to put a password on the computer to like prevent me from being on there all the time. And so I don't always spend my time on the computer. It was a new thing back then for us.
Yeah.
Um, my mom would always put a password on there, and I would find the ways of like figuring out what the password was. I would guess what she would put as a password, or I would go and figure out default password for a BIOS or something like that, and try to bypass it and get into my own computer, my
Hmm.
mom's computer. So that's kind of it's jokingly I always say that part of the story, but officially, like web application hacking, what I do now, I started doing that when I was about 16, 15, 16.
Oh, okay.
Um, so a decade ago, I started
Yeah.
doing this, and it was more of a, oh, I hear people talking about it and hear people doing this. It's pretty cool to learn, and there wasn't really much to do back then. It wasn't as big as it is now, and there wasn't that many opportunities as it is now. So I would just install random scripts that I would find online that people would have them for free and install them and play around and see if I can find a SQL injection or if I could
Oh,
find a bypass or something like that, an authentication bypass, something like that. And um, yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And back in 2014, a friend of mine asked, "Hey, why don't you like start making money from hacking?" I was like, "I don't think there's any legal ways of me making personally money from hacking,
yeah.
other than if that was my understanding of it was other than maybe a company picking me up or give me a pen test project. I don't have a way of doing that." And then she's like, "Well, have you tried doing bug bounties?" I was like, "What are bug bounties?" Like it was such a new thing to me. Now, and that by that time in 2010, 2011 is when I kind of just stopped caring, like not caring, but I stopped going after web application hacking and stuff like that. So it's been a couple of years since I've done it. And I was like, "What's bug bounties?" And it was a new subject. And he's like, "Go Google it. You'll figure it out." So I
Yeah.
started Googling stuff, and I found Yahoo's doing their own bug bounty. And I was like, "Oh, I use Yahoo. I used to love Yahoo." So I started poking around in 2014, got my first bounty with Yahoo. It's pretty small, but I mean, straight out of college, I was still in college,
Yeah.
and whatever they gave me, it was like, oh, I made this money doing practically not a lot of time, and it was just something I was poking around, just trying to get involved more than just trying to make money at the time.
Yeah.
And like, oh, this is fun. So that's kind of how I got into the bug bounty, and 2 years later now, I'm still kind of trying to stay hanging on to it.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say you found that first one, it didn't take a lot of time. Do you remember kind of like what it was looking like in terms of hours put in,
But the
days?
beginning, so when I first started doing this, I put a lot of hours in, and that was about, I want to say, usually I say about 30 hours a week I was putting in, maybe more than that.
Really?
My I was always on my laptop trying to do something. Even I would be going to class and I'd be on my laptop like working and I like I'm taking notes, but in reality I was trying to find some bugs.
Yeah.
I put a lot of work and time in the beginning, a lot than I should have, or not a lot that I should have, but a lot than most people do, or a lot more than I do right now. But yeah, back then I put a lot of work in, and I read every article that came out, every bug report that somebody published or wrote about it. Anything I get my hands on, I try to read it, or I would ask questions from other people, and I kind of network myself that first year. So I put a lot of work in the first year, and
Yeah.
it made it easier now.
And so that initial work, like when you were starting, was it strategic, or like I think of it like when I'm spending my time, it's almost like when I reflect back, a lot of it's like brute force time. Like I haven't stepped back and been like, how could I strategically make this better? Is that something you did and something you've done since?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I didn't really have a methodology. I didn't know like how to approach a bug mine. I would just, I always use Java as an example because it was the first real bar that I dedicated time to.
Yeah.
And I didn't have like a method of how I want to approach a bounty. So that first year was all up in the air. I would just go at it, just look at everything that's there without any game plan, without any like, first I'm going to look at this and then go down the list.
Yep.
Um, so I would just go for it, and then I realized like, okay, I'm kind of being unorganized. Nothing is organized. Like I would lose logs of what I've looked at and what I haven't looked at and stuff like that. So at the beginning, I wasted a lot of time not knowing what I'm doing, and also I knew a little bit, but I didn't know. I wasn't as knowledgeable as I am now. So the past 2 years, I've learned a bunch more. If I had the knowledge that I have today 2 years ago,
Yeah.
probably would have been in a better place. But at the same time, there wasn't a lot of bug bounties 2 years ago. I wasn't, dedicated so much time to it, and it was just a hobby. It wasn't like I wasn't thinking that, oh, this could turn into something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when I saw it turning into something, I was like, okay, well, I need to come up with a game plan. I need to come up with a way of being more organized and more professional, and put in exactly how much time I want to put in and stuff like that.
And what does that look like? Like, what's that process been like from you going from that kind of initial to the next step where it's kind of a little bit more professional, a little bit, kind of that where it's, I don't want to say professional hacker, but that next tier.
I've realized that if I want to make the most out of this, I need to find the right program for myself. I don't go and just participate in every program that's out there anymore like I used to, just because I don't know who's on the other side, who's triaging these reports, who's looking at them, and who's going to be pretty much reviewing them.
Oh, okay.
So if there's a couple of companies that are private that I already work with and have a really good experience with, I still always go back and look at them. If there's a new program that offers a decent amount, or they look like a good application or a good company, I'll give it a try. So I don't just go and be like, okay, I'm just gonna go through all this list and try and see all of them. And I usually try to put about 20 hours a week. It doesn't get to 20 hours usually, but I would, maximum of time I would do is 20 hours a week now versus my entire time during the day.
Yeah, that's kind of the struggle that I feel like right now. It's even when I'm not at the computer, like I guess like right there hunting. It's almost like the wheels are turning. Like, how could I found this that could turn into a vulnerability. How could I exploit it? And it's yeah. So
And
like
when stuff like that happens, like when I don't know, so the other thing that we kind of could talk about is when I find a vulnerability that I don't 100% know how to exploit. That's when our channels come in. We have a community. People don't mention, if it's a private program, we don't mention it. We don't want to share the vulnerability information, really. We don't want to say where it's at or who it's on.
yeah.
But there's been times when someone's like, oh, I'm trying to exploit this XXE. How do I do it? I tried this and this and that, and this is the errors I got, but no one mentions any names, any file names, any modules, nothing like that.
Yeah.
And everybody starts throwing out ideas like, oh, have you tried this payload? Have you tried doing this? Or the SQL injection, have you tried doing this? What's the error look like? And stuff like that. And that's when the community comes in. And if it gets really to the point of that, they want to communicate more, then we tell them, like, go to a private chat. Or I personally, if I ever ask somebody this, I ask them, like, can we agree to I quote a verbal non-disclosure agreement that you're not going to disclose it anywhere else. And it's between us, and then kind of we start working at it. And we've asked a couple of platforms if they care, like, hey, do you guys care if hackers who work together? Some of them don't like it.
Yeah.
Have told us that before in some way.
Hmm.
And there's been some that have told us, oh, no, you guys could do it. That's what makes a community. That's what makes you guys better by working with one another.
Yeah, I've seen that as well, where Like on some company profiles, it'll be like you need to report it, and you need to report it alone. Whereas others, that language is typically missing. And even the HackerOne team has been, the conversations that I've had with them has been about promoting the community and getting that together and developing that. So that's cool. Good on you guys. I saw the tweets about the Skype channel. So kind of like, how did that come about? And I see it's always referenced in terms of we. So I'm wondering who the we is.
So there is a group of us that I want to say about 5 or 6 of us. We just saw the channel one day and we're like just talking, and it wasn't like it's not really a bug bounty channel. It's just you could see a lot of random conversations, and it's people that I've only maybe met 2 or 3 of these guys in real life, like
Oh, okay.
because we're all across the world and not all of them come to the events that are happening here.
Yeah.
But it's people that we have built a good relationship with. So it was 5, 6 of us. We just started talking and making jokes or making fun of our own each other's reports, and like, oh, you made a mistake there. Just being just trying to have fun. And
Yeah.
a friend of mine, his name is Oliver. He's also another good researcher. We kind of talked about like, okay, well, it's 7 of us. It's kind of fun. What if we make another one and we invite everybody that's trustworthy and everybody that's knowledgeable enough that we can learn from, or they can learn from us in some way, and we all put them all into one channel.
Yeah.
And the conversation was, why don't we just use like IRC or something like that? So everybody else is like, well, a lot of people. For me personally, I can access my IRC channel through my computer. That's fine, but at the same time, everybody has a Skype
Yeah.
app on their phone, on their tablet, on their computer, and it just makes it super easy. And we don't put information that's sensitive on this channel, so it doesn't matter if it gets leaked.
Yeah.
The most that we get leaked is our names or who's in the channel and what we talked about, but we don't have any sensitive information on there.
Okay.
So when I say we, it's like me and a couple of guys who came up with the idea, and we kind of moved this to a second channel, and we get tons of people trying to get into the channel, like, hey, can you add me? And we unfortunately can't, just because if we don't, it's not that we don't want everybody to join the channel, but we don't want to get too out of hand, and we don't want to keep it at a certain level of people that would actually contribute to the channel.
Right.
I usually just go through the channels list, and I'm like, okay, you haven't talked about, I haven't seen your name pop into the channel in 2 months. I X them out and I kick them out to can invite more people every month.
Oh, really?
And we have reps from every. I've reached out to every bug bounty platform that's out there, and I have 1 or 2 reps at least from each platform in that channel. So when somebody wants to complain or has a problem or a suggestion or something like that from one platform, we can always ping them like, hey, do you guys want to answer? So I don't have to answer that for you, because I don't know a lot of information from it, but there's times that after that I answer the question or something, I'm like, oh, from what I've heard, this is how they do it, or this is what they say about this question. But we've also got people from each platform involved. You name BugCrowd, HackerOne, they're all there. They have either the analyst on there, they have a DevOps person in there, representative, answering questions or posting content. And it's also, it gets used a lot for content. So if I write a blog post and I want people to see it, I post on the channel like, hey, by the way, if you guys want to read this is what I did. It's not like we don't always say that's like advertisement for ourselves, but it's something. Even if I see someone else's write up, let's say HackerOne discloses a bug online, and if we think it's interesting, someone would post it like, have you guys seen this? This is crazy, and everyone starts making comments on it.
Yeah, I saw actually you had retweeted, and actually kind of a lot of people kind of went nuts over the recent
That's a start off.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I do. That's another thing. What's great with the bug bounties is like I saw that, and it wasn't more of a, oh my god, it's a good role. It was like, this is a really good report as well.
Yeah.
It's really well categorized. Kudos to the researcher, and the amount for it was pretty decent. I mean, I wouldn't complain with that. And that's kind of like, and so always posting stuff like that on Twitter. So my followers, when they see it, we post it. Some other people that are in the channel, I don't even know who they are. They've been added through a friend who added their friend, and they get added into it. And we've told them, like, if you guys are going to add people, make sure you trust them yourselves.
Right.
So that's kind of what we use the channel for. It's more of a knowledge-based community for everybody to be able to talk to one another without the middleman with Twitter or the character limitation that Twitter offers on there as well.
Right. Cool. So not completely switching gears, but that's in my mind, that's kind of like the one tool for hacking, right? It's kind of that community, that support. But I've also seen a couple tweets from you, like questions. I think it was Nmap and there was one of the SQL injection tools, kind of like how to. I think you had mentioned doing it manually, and it was getting a little bit frustrating. So you're looking for some help. But I'm just wondering, like I've seen reference to kind of Burp, Nmap, Shodan, SQL Map, a couple of repos on GitHub. Kind of what tools have you used, and what have you found valuable in your hunting, and kind of taking you to that next level?
I was a huge follower of Burp. I 100% supported Burp. I don't use a lot of their um, I don't use a lot of the functionalities of Burp offers, but just because I like to do stuff usually manually so I can see what I'm doing exactly.
Okay.
But Burp would be the number one program I would, number one tool I would ever always use. It's always open on my computer. I don't know why I never close it out. It's always there. Usually it's Burp would be the number one thing I always just have people that ask me like, oh, what do you use? It's always Burp. I mean, I've used other scanners, I've used other tools
Yeah.
when I first started doing this, but Burp's been a huge help in making my work easier and a lot more readable, if it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's friendlier. I nmap a lot of stuff when I want to look for certain open ports or an application that might be running a different port. I would use an nmap. And when I have SQL injections that I manually find them and I can't exploit it, or if I'm not 100% sure if it's not vulnerable or if it's vulnerable, I always feed it to SQL map with my payload or my particular payload that I have.
Okay.
But there's times that, like you said, I was getting frustrated about doing something with SQL map that would not happen. I ended up putting like an hour of myself like manually typing stuff in to see if it works.
Yeah.
So yeah, those would be the ones that I've used, and the ones that I reference to GitHub. It's usually so that last year I realized that I haven't really published any of my own tools that I use. So those were the ones that I wrote myself. They were just tools those tools are already out there. Other people have written them, but I wanted to give it a twist of my own way of approaching it. So the tools might be the same. It might be the core idea is the same as somebody else's tool, but the way it outputs information or the information that it looks like, they're a little bit different. It's more of a what do I look for when I do a pen test?
Yeah.
So one is like a subdomain brute forcer. There's tons of them out there, but the one that I wrote looks for a subdomain takeover that was It was a research I was published by somebody else. It became really popular, but there was no tools that actually check to see if those domains are being pointed to the right place or if it's being unclaimed or not. So I wrote the tool that automated my work, so I don't have to just use someone else's tool, get all these subdomains and check them one by one, or check the IP addresses that they point to one by one. And I just made my tool just output for me. What does it see? If there's an error, what's the error on there?
Yeah.
And stuff like that to make it a little bit easier for me. Then doing that kind of like take a couple of hours a week off my hands, so I don't have to worry about it. And I have my own blogs hosted elsewhere that I have all my tools on. So I would run a huge recon kind of an idea on there and have it output all this stuff for me, so I don't have to do it manually anymore. And it kind of saves my time, and I can focus on other stuff while I wait for that to output.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I grabbed it, I cloned it today, and was playing with it. And kind of for those viewing and kind of listening, the idea, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is I thought it was very similar to NocPy, but it seemed really cool in that I saw it going through search engine results looking for subdomains, as opposed to it going and grabbing, or maybe I'm mixing up tools, but going and grabbing like a word list and going through things.
So the one that I wrote personally is the one that actually gives a word list.
Yeah.
What it does is it's actually looking at the content of what the subdomain is pointed to. So it grabs the source code from that subdomain and looks for keywords that I've already given.
Okay.
So if a subdomain is pointing to, let's say, a WordPress hosting website, and then I've told it, look and see if it says the exact error page that that website has.
Yeah.
If it matches that key phrase, then output saying, oh, this subdomain is pointing to this service and it's not claimed by the service provider. And that right there, I could go and claim it. So then I could just report and be like, hey, by the way, you guys didn't claim the CNAME, and I just claimed it, and here's proof. But having to mainly go through like 100 domains or like 200 subdomains to figure out which ones have been claimed, it kind of gets frustrating when we have a huge scope. And that's kind of what I wrote that for. I had a huge scope for a pen test that I got. It was a huge scope, and I did not want to go through all the subdomains and check them one by one and see where they point to. And I just wrote that tool in a couple of days, and I was like, I'm just gonna publish and see how people react to it and people support it. I was like, oh, maybe I should write more stuff like that.
Yeah. Cool.
So
Yeah. No. As you explained that, yeah, I definitely screwed that up. So I was playing with yours, and then as I was doing more research, I've seen kind of the connections with BugCrowd, and I want to say
uh,
their CTO or somebody has a GitHub repo, and I saw it linked from either one of your blog posts or there was a
there's
connection.
another project. Yeah, there was another project when I was on Internet Book Crowd when the the head of the DevOps team, I want to say, was Jay Crane, who's also a good friend of mine. He wrote a couple of tools, and yeah, a gentleman that just joined BugCrowd last year, Jason Haddix.
Yes.
Yeah, he is the one who wrote a recon tool using Recon NG that
Yeah.
actually pulls subdomains from Google and Bing and all those search engines. That we did he did a talk at DEF CON in regards to it also, and I kind of jumped onto it and had like a 5 or 10 minute talk within his talk at DEF CON. So
Okay.
that's the tool you were referencing to. It's written by Jason Haddix and Recon NG, which is also a really good tool to do. But I like more of the approach of I like approaching it with the subdomain brute force, just because search engines might find a lot of the domains.
Yeah.
I like to do both if I can.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I've had a better luck with supplement brute forcing versus Google, but I mainly go in Google for supplements also. So
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's one site where I found like scene name references. For some reason, NocPy shows the like has Heroku showing up,
mhm.
and I can't find what's pointing to Heroku, but it always shows up when I scan this domain. And so I thought I was testing out your tool and testing out the other tool, trying to find out if I can find out why the
Right.
Heroku is coming up on that one domain. So yeah, I had gone down the rabbit hole. I stopped the research, kind of for preparing for this interview, and kind of went down that. And I find that happens a lot. I don't know about you, but yeah,
It does happens though, but there is ways around that, and there's always ways to figure those out. Also, I personally don't try to waste my too much time on those. If I click and it doesn't happen, I'm just gonna move on to the next
that's
one.
good. Okay,
Just because it's not a race, but there's also you want to be able to get the most out of your time. And I try to like stay within my 20 hours a week, so I don't go over or less.
yeah,
So if I make X amount of time, X amount of money, I could be like, okay, no, I made this much in 20 hours or less, and it wasn't like I put in a ton of time and then didn't get some out of it.
right on, right on. Yeah, um, and I think I've seen reference. You're still in school, right? Like you mentioned.
Yes, I
Okay,
have one more semester left besides this one. This one's almost over, so I have one more until I graduate from Sacramento State University.
well, nice. Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And it's computer science, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not that I'm too creepy, but I'm just going through Twitter. There's a lot of information there, so I was making notes.
Yeah, I do.
Um,
I make a couple of references to my school. Every couple of months, there's always an event at school about security. They do a security event, and I always post about it on school and on my Twitter, just like see what kind of feedback I can get if I can get somebody involved from the interested to come and like talk or present at a school once a month. So
okay. Right on. Right on. So there were a couple of things. I had extra questions, but there was kind of like you referenced the 20 hours, and then you also made mention of kind of the private bounties and the private programs. And so, in terms of kind of approaching kind of the bug hunting and that kind of stuff, if it's not a private invitation, do you typically leave it to sites that you're familiar with, or is there like a threshold with how you'll? You talked about having that reputation with the reporters, but how do you kind of switch gears or switch the lens, and how would you then approach a new target if you had one?
the newer targets are, let's say, a public program that launches today. For me, it's a couple of things that I look at.
Okay.
The first one is if it's a well-known company. So if it's a huge company that um, it's well known, and I kind of want on my resume, then I will dedicate some time to it.
Oh,
The
nice.
other one is if I use their services. So if it's a small company that I use their services myself, then yeah, I would like to participate in. The third one is what the minimum amount is that they offer,
Hmm.
or if they offer anything, or if they offer a service, something I want, then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do it and see what I can get out of it or what it could do. But you typically leave it on the three options like that. So the first one is always who they are, or if I use their services and what they offer. There are some smaller programs that I've participated. So let's say I find a one that I could chain it to another company or another program, and I see that they use the same tools or the same applications. I mean, I would go and look at it once in a while, but typically I try to stay focused on a program a month or two programs on that month. So I kind of focus on it. I know what I've looked at and what I haven't looked at.
Hmm.
And if I do get bored from it, or if I don't find enough stuff, or like I'm like, okay, I'm done, and there's nothing I can find from it, then I move on and find a new target.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I find, yeah, there's like if you don't, it's almost like that piece of kind of breaking and moving on. Because if you don't, I find you're just kind of retesting the same stuff, and you forget where you've been. So that makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of the private programs, um, I'm not as familiar with BugCrowd, but I know that they also offer like the Flex program, right?
Mhm.
Where it's kind of like almost like you have a couple day window to go and find as much as you can. What's the experience been like with that for you? Because I've seen a couple
Um,
times where you've listed stuff, but then it's like no duplicate, duplicate, duplicate.
I mean, the duplicate happens on any platform you go on. It's not particularly just one platform. It just comes down to when you get to it and what kind of phone you find. So the low hanging fruit, I typically just report them just to see if I can. Someone might have missed it,
Yeah,
but in my mind, I expect it to get duped, not no matter what platform or program it is, just because how easy they are and how people could find them so easily in a matter of minutes.
yeah,
Those become duplicates. So there's times when I'm researching something else and I come up across from it and I have like nine of them. It's like duplicate, duplicate. And I'm like, it's frustrating, but at
yeah.
the same time, I kind of expect it already.
Okay.
But as far as the flex programs go with BugCrowd, I've had a personally had a great experience,
Okay.
and I've kind of realized I figured out a way of actually going about those programs
Yeah.
without getting a lot of duplicates anymore. I have people that tell me, "Oh, like I reported this many stuff and I got duplicated because I was late a week or something like that." And I tell them, "Well, you were probably going for low hanging fruits versus trying to go for stuff that not a lot of people can find, or scanners or tools can't find, and you have to manually test for it." And ever since I've started doing that, it's kind of been a boost in my experience with doing BugCrowd, doing their flex programs, and those have been also a little bit challenging just because of the window's smaller. So if a program launches, tomorrow at a certain time, and they tell me to have 2 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, I know that I have to focus on it in that matter of time if I want to get something out of it. Versus a ongoing program that I could play around, go back to it, and go play around with something else and go back to it as well. So the flex has been like that for me, and they've been good experience in general.
One. Okay. So a couple of technical difficulties there where we lost a little bit of the response, but just in a nutshell, we were talking about kind of the flex programs there and kind of the low hanging fruit and how it's kind of expected that sometimes you're going to get some duplicates there. And the better approach is kind of to look at those kind of, I don't want to say complex, but kind of the more challenging, let's say, vulnerabilities, ones that are kind of companies will pay out a little bit more for, and there's a little bit more that goes into them, right? Which actually it kind of brings me to a question. One of your blog posts, you had talked about kind of tips from your hacking and that kind of stuff. And I think there were three things that I kind of took away. There was the don't doubt yourself, which was one heading. It was kind of check everything, so parameters, post request, input validation, and don't go for the low hanging fruit. So if you were talking to, and that was from Nullcon actually. So if you were talking to, say, yourself 2 years ago or somebody brand new in the program, um, like what would that be advice that you would give to yourself 2 years ago beyond kind of like the low hanging fruit? Don't doubt yourself. Like, is there anything else that you think would help somebody or help yourself?
Honestly, the whole "don't doubt yourself" was the biggest one for me, just because I don't know what program it was. I was looking for loans and I was kind of late to the program, and I was like, "Oh, probably people have looked at this," and other people have probably looked at it a million times and didn't find anything. And I told myself, you know what, worst case, I'm gonna get a duplicate or I'm gonna get an NA. And I started reporting some more severe wounds, and it got triaged and it got resolved. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should just not worry about what everybody else is doing. Well, not so much that, but not worry about getting a duplicate and just focus on just doing what I want to do with this program. Just go and find vulns of whatever type I want and just reporting them. It's not going to hurt me. So that's one of the things I did. And I also, when I said that, don't go for the low hanging fruit, that's kind of what I also started doing.
Hmm.
I don't go and report anything I just find usually. I
Mm.
report stuff that I can find the impact. I can explain the impact to the analyst or the program owner. And I report usually those. That's kind of why I have a higher acceptance rate. I stopped reporting stuff that I just find, I think, I personally thought was something that they should fix or they should get removed or worked on. And I kind of stopped doing that and just focus more on more severe vulns and things that actually I would want to see as a program owner. And that kind of
Mm.
mentality came about when I actually started being an intern at one of the platforms. I was an intern for BugCrowd, and I got to see how the analysts work, and kind of got to see, no, kind of got to see behind the scene and how things get handled. And I realized, oh, maybe my approach was not the best one, because I saw how other people approached me or how other people wrote reports or how they felt. And being on both ends now, I can understand better. I can't always like blame the analyst. I can't say, oh, well, I always like you want in the same talk that you were mentioning. I say something like, don't compare two companies together to have different budgets.
Yeah.
That's kind of when I found that out. I was like, oh, there's a lot more work in the process of building a bug bounty program than the typical researcher knows or sees, unless they have ran their own bug bounty program or been involved with bug bounty program themselves. So yeah, I mean, being on both ends is kind of how I figured out to not go for the low hanging fruit and how to write a better report, and those kind of things make a difference. And how good your report is, how detailed your report is, and if you mention what the impact is. There's times when I report to a bigger company and I don't mention the impact because I know who the engineers are, and
Yeah.
I know as a fact they're going to go look into it, they're going to dig into it, and they're going to find out better impact or a better way to exploit it. So I don't mention a lot of details. But there's also programs that I work on. They're smaller, and I look at it and I'm like, okay, maybe I should put a little bit of detail in this, they could figure it out and they could understand what this, why I reported this, what the impact of this is, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also like the SSRF we were talking about, right? Like that report was kind of like hugely detailed, right? Like kind of one, two, and three. So yeah, no, that makes total sense. Um, and so just kind of digging more into that, like what have you found to be kind of like the key takeaways from, say, a report that is more detailed or is more helpful to an engineer? Like, what has it been that you include in that stage as opposed to kind of leaving it out?
So, like I said earlier, there's two things that I look for: knowing who the engineers are. So, if the engineer, I know the engineer knows a lot about hacking, or not about just the vuln types in general. I would make it short and to the point. Like, go here, do this, do that. This is what you're gonna get.
Okay.
And that's it. But there's times when I would go and actually write up an entire, huge report of like steps on how to do it, why it's critical, and like I would try and like show him like what information I can pull out of it. I would tell him like to show impact. I'm pulling this information out of your web application. I will demo it for them. I'll make a video for it. But
Mm.
the one thing that I've really in the past 2 years I want to say I've realized is that a lot of um, a lot of it comes down to how your report is and how you present it. If your report isn't detailed enough, chances are it's going to be a back and forth of, oh, I can't reproduce this, or I don't see an impact, or explain more. The payload's not working. So I try to, at least, the least I could do is make sure there's no back and forth with the researcher or with the analyst. The other one is like I said, mentioned earlier, details make a difference. Some companies might pay out a better they might give you a better bounty because of how detailed and how professional your report was. It also makes it easier for the other person on the other end to get through it. So let's say if I reported 12 bugs in one night or 1 week, I want them to get through faster. So the better my reports are, the faster they're going to get through all that workload, and the faster the payouts are going to come out for
Yeah.
me and the researchers as well. So the writing the report is probably one of the biggest things I always try to talk about. It helps both of us.
That's crazy. Yeah. Hopefully myself and then the other people listening to this get to that kind of that stage where it's 9, 10 a week. That's impressive. That's good.
Depending on how it all depends on the program. Also, it's not like there's weeks that I don't find anything, and I just kind of let it go for a couple of days and
Yeah.
go back to. There's also times when I take a month off of bug bounties just because I get burnt out on it so much.
Really, eh?
Yeah, I took the entire second half of February off from bug bounties. Kind of, I would still go back to it when I would get bored. I'll put a couple of hours in, but I try to go and play video games on my own, or I'll
Yeah.
just go and do something different that's bug bounty, just because it gets boring at once, and you can't. I don't want to get burnt out on it and not do it at all. So I'd rather take a couple of weeks off, and instead of paying doing 20 hours of bug bounty, I'll play 20 hours of video games, something like that.
What's the go-to?
For games, I have an Xbox One, so I'm usually typically playing Call of Duty on my Xbox.
Okay, right on.
That's what I've always, I put time in on then, or I'll do bug bounties and go play some video games. I get frustrated for a couple of days and go back to it.
Yeah.
It's a balance that kind of helps me keep going. Just because if I keep seeing nothing comes out, like there's no phones coming for 1 week, 2 weeks, at one point I'm like, well, maybe I should just find something else to do. I had that happen to me last year, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do this, and I stopped doing bug bounties. I wanted to for a really long time, for a couple of months.
Really?
And then I was like, okay, I'm kind of fading away. I stopped learning stuff, and I my reputation with HackerOne was dropping, and
Yeah.
and then I was like, okay, maybe I should start doing a little bit more, but this time maybe I should approach it differently instead of just getting there for 40 hours a week and getting frustrated from that. I can't find stuff.
Yeah.
So
No, it's honestly it's refreshing to hear. Because like when I could speak to people starting out, and kind of you don't like what we were talking about. You're brute forcing. It's kind of like you're putting in tons of hours, and you feel like there's not a lot coming out of it. And it must be like one week I'll tell my wife, "Oh yeah, no, it's great. This is awesome. This is what you got to do." And then the next week it's like, "Oh, I don't know if this is worth it. Should I be doing this? This is." And so it's good to know, kind of like at various levels that's there.
but the other thing with bug bounties is like I didn't realize this till a couple months ago, not a year and a half ago, is that the bug bounties alone have been a very good networking tool for me.
Hmm.
I've gone to meet people from huge companies that are based out of where I'm in the Bay Area, so they're really
Okay.
close by. I would go and take a train and go stop by and go to their office, go to their campus. HackerOne alone was one of them. BugCrowd was one of them. I got to meet everybody at BugCrowd, HackerOne. I got to meet people from Yahoo and some other companies that I work with, the bug bounties, and kind of got to meet them and see how they approach things. And it was cool that they asked for my input as a researcher, like, oh, what can we do to make our program better, or we can attract people to our program? What would you want to see out of the program to be more engaged and involved with? And I would give them my feedback and go grab lunch with them, go grab coffee with them, and just see what they do and stuff like that. And that's also have like um, I've been given opportunities to just meet and network with all these people, and it's been learn from them. And I would shoot them a question like, "Hey, like, I want to learn about this topic, and I know you are really familiar with this topic. What would you like? What would you suggest?" And they'll tell me, "Oh, go do this or go do this." So
Hmm.
that's another thing that the bug bounty in general has provided me. Besides besides meeting people, it's just knowledge of being able to see how people that are already in the industry working as engineers or um, people that are running these bug bounties, how they work and how they learn and stuff like that was another really huge takeaway from bug bounties.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool to hear. The reach, like kind of the reaching out and developing that network, has that been you kind of putting yourself out there? Like how did that come about? Like how did you end up coming in contact with these guys and going and meeting them?
A lot of them were just like just me tweeting to them or like,
Hmm.
hey, I wanted to come and see you guys. Like, I want to meet your team. Is that okay? Or like, I have plans of going to see that they're close by. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be at this area, and then I would love to like grab coffee with you guys' team or just stop by and say hello to meet you guys. And that's happened a couple of times. I've gone to numerous places that I was like, hey, I just want to meet you guys and grab coffee and kind of see who you guys really are and put a face
Yeah.
to the names. And a lot of it also happens at DEF CON and Black Hat as well.
Okay.
Every year I'll reach out to a group of different researchers to meet with them, people that I know that are never going to be in the U.S. or they're not in California where I'm from. So I would reach out to them like, hey, like, I know are you going to be at DEF CON? If they say yes, oh, we should grab a coffee, we should grab a beer or something out in Vegas. And I want to say the past 2 years it's happened every year where a group of us sit down for a couple hours, a couple of drinks, and we just talk about bug bounties. We just talk about just bug bounty in general and what we like and what we have done. We share some stuff that we don't want to just publicly share with other people,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So DEF CON was a huge part of it for me personally.
Oh, that's
The
cool.
first one I went to, I really didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
I was just going to just see how I've never done DEF CON. I always wanted to go. So I went and now I'm by myself. I went to a couple of talks and went to the hotel and my wife was with me when we went and did stuff. And then the second year, is when I actually got to meet everybody. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna force myself to get out of my comfort zone
Yeah.
and set up these meetings with people. I set up meetings with the guy from HackerOne, the guys from the BugCrowd before I knew anybody. And then other researchers that were really, really well known, and I asked them like, "Hey, are you gonna be there? Let's grab a coffee. Let's grab a beer. Let's go get food." And then the next year was the last year, and I just started doing it more and more. And then it makes it easier to communicate with people when you put a face to their name.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to like, talk to them on Skype, Twitter, whatever. But when you know what they look like and you know how they act, and you get a vibe from them, it's easier to interact and kind of build a relationship with them.
Oh, that's crazy.
So
That's awesome. Good for you. That's awesome. Yeah. That yeah. For me, I can think of that. I can see myself doing the exact same thing. Like that first year, you just kind of go and you want to get a feel for things, and yeah, it takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there and just kind of
it's
start reaching
it
out.
makes the entire experience of being at a conference more fun when you know people at the conference.
Yeah.
Like last year, I actually had a couple of my friends that I made friends with these people, like doing bug bounties, and we actually like the entire conference we would hang out and like we'll go to all those different talks and we'll go to different parties. It just makes it more fun when you know people that are there are gonna be there versus going there as someone who got invited by themselves and kind of go and you kind of get bored of it and want to leave when you don't know anybody.
Yeah, for sure.
So
That's crazy. And
yeah.
then um, at this time, like when you kind of like that first time you went, and then the second time you went, like where were you in the bug bounty world? Like was that kind of like when you had kind of developed you kind of hit that second tier and you developed your own strategies and you were a lot more successful, or were you still kind of in that transition phase? Or
So the first time I went to DEF CON, I was not even involved with bug bounties. I just wanted to
oh
go to DEF CON to go to DEF CON.
yeah,
Like, the second year I went to is when it was so I started bug bounties February of 2014. I want to say January, February 2014.
okay,
So that 2014 year when I went to DEF CON, I was kind of like involved, but I wasn't as involved as I am now.
yeah,
But I had a couple of good reports and I had a good reputation of my own. So when I reached out to a couple of researchers that were already doing this for years before me, they were nice enough and kind enough to actually like want to meet me. Like, oh yeah, I'll be there. Let's go get coffee. Let's go get a beer. And
oh that's
I was
awesome.
like, oh, that's awesome. Everyone's cool with it. And I
Yeah,
got a couple of people that I would have never met if I wouldn't have done that reach out. If I wouldn't have reached out to these people, it would have never happened. So that's another thing. Is networking has been a huge key for everything I've done.
wow, that's great. No, that's awesome to hear, and I really appreciate this video, and hopefully it's kind of that first impetus for other people to kind of get their feet wet and kind of take that step out of the comfort zone and do that. That's great. I'm conscious of our time because I'm just watching the timer go, and I feel like once I hit kind of that 25-minute mark, it's going to just error out again. So I was figuring we could just kind of wrap it up on that note.
Okay.
Is there anything? Is there any other parting advice, wisdom, anything that's kind of come to your mind in terms of the interview that you think someone brand new to this would benefit from?
I would honestly say if someone brand new wants to start doing this, I would say go and kind of read everybody else's blog posts. I mean, the amazing thing about this community is that everybody involved has written a piece of proof of concept, advice, something related to this topic somewhere, whether if it's Twitter or Facebook note or a blog post. There's tons of those out there, and that's one of the things I did, and I feel like it was very helpful. And I know a lot of people do that. Is go and read those. It kind of gives you a feel of how other people approach it, and it kind of helps you figure out a way you want to do it, or you want to like do a similar approach to other people. And also, I know that the guys from HackerOne, BugCrowd, and other platforms have also build a really good community and to have resources out there actually providing to the researchers. And I would say take advantage of those and tweet to people. Don't feel like I want to say this, and it's that's from experience. Don't feel like if you tweet to somebody, you're not gonna get a reply. I personally have people emailing me and tweeting me like, "Hey, I just saw your blog post and I saw this somewhere, and I want to get started. Where do I go?" I don't mind taking the time to email somebody back if it's
Hmm.
an easy question. If they're not asking for too much details,
Yeah,
that's a different story. But if they ask me like, hey, what should I do if I want to start? I would always send them a couple of books, a couple of resources, and tell them if they really want to do it bad enough, they would go after them. There's people that like, they would go do those stuff, and they would email me back, okay, I did that. What else now? And I'll be like, okay, start doing a little bit of research on your own.
yeah,
So always reach out to people. It's not the worst cases; they're not going to get back to you, and it's not going to really do much to you. It's going to happen. Rejection's going to happen at one point in life.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly. for everyone kind of listening and watching, that's how you and I connected, right? Like I decided I was just going to take this jump and do these kind of interviews. I thought they'd be helpful and people would be interested in them. And so you were the first person I interviewed. And honestly, it was that same type of thing. I was just thought, going to get out of the comfort zone, going to send that email. Worst thing, Ben doesn't get back to me, but you replied like almost immediately. Like I was
Yeah,
surprised that same day.
my emails are always synced on my phone. So if I see someone, I don't know if the subject is like it's not the subject is detailed enough to understand what it's from. I always like look at it, and if it's something I can reply right away. If I'm not busy doing something, then I always reply right away. And I feel like most people are like that, or even if they're busy, they're gonna get back to you eventually, unless they really don't want to communicate with people that are outside of their circle.
Yeah.
That's a different story. It's understandable, but I want to say 9 out of 10 times, I've never had anybody not reply or get back to me at one point in time.
No, that's great. Well, like I said, Ben, I honestly can't thank you enough. I think this has
Yeah.
been awesome. I think people are going to get a ton out of this. Anyways, you've been number one, so hopefully this will be one of in a long list of interviews. So yeah, thanks again, and for everyone else, I think I've actually got the HackerOne team coming up in a couple weeks, so I'll be getting that out for people, and I'll be sure to kind of tweet the link to this. We'll have it up on YouTube as well as a podcast, and yeah. So on that note, we'll kind of wrap things up.